Hey everybody, I'm Matt Hernandez, and today we're going to talk about practical lighting. So you probably heard me talk about it a lot, because I have, in a lot of my other videos and at workshops. Practical lighting is when you have a light source in a photo that's not actually lighting the subject, but you add a light out of frame or hide it to make it look like it is. So a good example would be, you could put, if the sun's behind somebody, you could put an edge light on them and gel it orange and have that out of frame, obviously. And then if the sun is going down and not very powerful, or maybe diffused a little bit if it's hazy, then the edge light can add, it's probably gonna light them, but you can, or if you have like an A9 III, you could probably overpower it completely and it wouldn't add much of a rim light. Then you could add the rim light in with that extra light if you wanted the sky super dark and you still wanted the sun to rim light them. So that would be one example. The one I use the most is stadium lights, because I take a lot of pictures of athletes. So I like to put the stadium lights, I like to turn them on, and I like to put them in the frame behind the subject because it just looks more interesting that way. It adds, I don't know, it just adds a lot to the photo, I feel like. So you don't have to turn them on. People ask me all the time how I do that. And that's a very good question. You just need to make sure that I guess that the best thing to do would be to just become friendly with the athletic director, the coach, whoever's going to be in charge of letting you into the field. And most of the times, because you're doing a photo shoot for the kids, they're there for the kids. They're going to accommodate you and turn them on. I have had problems every now and then. It doesn't usually happen. But another good thing to do is just have the parent ask, because they're probably not going to say no to them, even if they don't know you. If the athletic director doesn't know you're a coach, then the parent asking is probably the better way to go. But it looks better than just a black pole in the background. So it's funny because the parents always think that I'm using it for lighting for my purposes, but it's not really. It's just for interest in the background, and then I add a light in to make it look like it's lighting them. So let's go look at capture one, and I'll show you some examples. So this was a shoot that I did a couple of days ago. Let's look at the behind the scenes first. So we've got a few different angles here. So you can see I'm in the dugout shaded. I've got them on the edge of the shadow also, just so that they're not going to be blinded by the sun behind them here. So that's a good trick to put people in the shade. Most photographers know that, but if you don't, it helps people. Even if the sun isn't in their face, if it's behind them and it's really bright, they tend to squint. And if it's cloudy, the clouds act as a huge softbox, so it just kind of brightens everything up, even if it doesn't look like it sometimes. So having people in the shade always helps, or usually helps. So we've got a Manny Ortiz Beauty Dish silver interior with the diffusion, an FJ400, and then I'm on a boom here. And then we've got another light, camera right, with the deep focus reflector, and I have a 30-degree grid on it. So that grid's gonna focus the light directly on the subject. I've got a piece of tape, you can't see it, but he's standing on it right here, where all of the baseball players stood. And so that light's gonna hit him on this, it's kind of, angled back there, so it's gonna hit him on the shoulder and the side of the head, the side of the leg. And the reason I put it on camera right is because that's where I was framing my photo. The light in the background that's turned on is camera right. So if you do it opposite, you have the light on the opposite side as the practical light that's out of frame, then it will still look good, but it's not gonna look as good and make as much sense if they're on the same side. So, all right, so you can see one angle there. Here's one from a little bit further behind. So you can see that see how angled it is. So a lot of times I'll put the lights across from each other. That I didn't do that in this case because with baseball players, the bill adds another layer of difficulty there to the picture, because you can see how low they like to pull down their hats. So I use that big modifier in the middle just so that it's going to light everybody the same. I don't have to worry about moving it. All right, and then let's look at one more angle real quick. And this one's from my angle inside the dugout there. So you can see the grid on it there, and then you can see the light in the background. And I've got a 24-70 lens that I'm using. So I've got them just on the edge right there, where they're not, just almost in the sun, but not quite. All right, let's go to capture one and take a look at a few of these. So these are from that shoot. So you can see here's the light back in the background. So I was at 1/51,000th of a second, ISO 250, f2.8, 57 millimeters. So shoots like this with a prop like a bat, I typically shoot with my 24-70, because if they hold the bat out at me, I like to distort it a little bit because it looks cooler. That gives some foreground interest, especially if I'm shooting shallow. It's going to make the bat a little bit blurry. They're going to be sharp, and the background's going to be blurry. So we've got this worked out really well. So you can see that which I don't actually think, I don't know if that's the sun or not. It's probably not. I was thinking that was the sun shining in the outfield, and then the infield was in the shadows, but that's actually, they have a turf infield, so that's probably what that is. But I was gonna say that's the sun helped us out to light the background there. But I exposed this, so it was pretty even, I think, because the sun was still up high enough. So I exposed this so that it was dark. It's probably about 2 stops under. Not too dark though. All right, there's another example. There's one of the ones with the bat that I was talking about where they hold it out. So I could have gotten a little bit closer and make it more distorted, but that's not super distorted, but it is blurry a little bit, so it does give foreground interest still. So I think that looks pretty nice though. Okay, so let's go to some more photos now that I've taken in the past. So we've actually got a video on this one called Make It Rain, so we'll link that if you want to check that out too. So this one's got some mist and some rain in it, and we use that to spread out the lights, but we've got a stadium light in the background there. The lights that the mist is spreading out, they're a little bit higher. Obviously, they're top of the frame, but it still looks like that's the stadium lights lighting them. So they're not in exactly the same place where it would be coming from that light in the background, but you're still gonna see that. You're gonna see that it's dark and think, oh, there's other lights on too. And people aren't usually gonna think that deeply about this unless it's a photographer probably. Because we analyze pictures, but most people are just gonna see it and their brain's gonna know what it is. So this one's in the middle of the day. It's a lot brighter, obviously. And so we've got, so this really wouldn't light him like this. Now, if you look at a game, like an action shot at night, like a football game, the players will be edge lit by the stadium lights, and your ISO is gonna be super high, but it's still gonna have the same type of look. So that's why this works. So even though it's in the middle of the day, you know, it still adds to it. It gives it more dimension, makes it look more 3D, and I think, I'm a fan. I think it looks awesome. Even though it really wouldn't, those lights wouldn't be that strong in the middle of the day that would light him, but I still think it adds to the picture quite a bit. So this one's obviously very underexposed, 1/80,000th f4.5. So it looks more like it's nighttime even though it's not. And the sky's a lot darker. That might be even darker than 2 stops. And then we've got that light back there, right? So that's, again, the light's on the same side as the stadium light in this one. So that one looks more realistic, like it's actually the light that's lighting him. So this one, there's only a light camera right. There's the edge light is camera left. There's no light back there. But again, your brain's gonna tell you that's where it's coming from because of this one and because it's overcast. So the sun's going down on camera left on this one, even though you don't see it. You do see that it's brighter on this side of the frame, and the light's back there too. So we could have gelled this edge light orange and made it look a little bit more like the sun, but you know, it doesn't matter. It could be either one in this one actually. And so this actually brings up a good point. So you can see the difference here. This edge light is wrapping around him a lot more than this one or this one. This one's wrapping a little bit more too, and that one. These are a little bit more true edge lights also. So the reason I'm telling you that is because you have to pay attention to where you're putting your edge light. So for example, with my little lighting diagram here, this would be more of a true edge light like the baseball players were lit. Now, if you start to creep around, actually I don't need the camera in there. If you start to creep the lights around like this, then it's gonna wrap more and it's still gonna be an edge light, but not as much. And then when you get more like this, then the lighting's gonna start to get weird on the face at that point. So you wanna keep it more around probably right here or more drastic. Now, when you come more directly behind them like this, you have to pay attention to where that edge light is, because as far as relation to the camera, because the closer or the more that the camera can see it, the more chance there is going to be for flare, number one. And then also the light's going to be in the shot there, right? And you don't want that. So with the compressed lens, that's going to be more likely to not happen. With a wide angle lens, it's going to be harder to hide that backlight. So you've really got to pay attention to where it is, where you're putting it, and how far back it is, because you don't want the face shadows to start to get weird. You want them to still look flattering and good on them. So that picture that we were just looking at, you can see that's still really nice, but if that light comes forward a little bit more, then you're gonna start to get, it's gonna start to combine, like right here on his cheek, it's not gonna look as good. We're gonna get weird nose shadows going on, and not a fan of that. So just pay attention to where you're putting it and what angle they're at. So here's a composite I did for one of the soccer teams here this year for their team pictures. So I lit this in the indoor facility, which was a huge mistake because it was extremely hot. It was like probably 200 degrees in there. But, So we thought it was gonna rain, it ended up raining. So we took it in the indoor facility, and I lit it with the edge lights so that I could cut them out and put a sky behind them, because they're gonna use this for a team banner that we hung up, or that they hung up at the field. So there's the original. You can see how I shot it. You can see a little bit of flare camera left from that edge light just out of frame, but that wasn't a big deal because it wasn't going over the subject, so it was fine. But you can see how this one really does look like those lights in the background are lighting them in this case. And there's the background I used just so you could see for reference. Okay, so this is an example that I shot for Westcott, actually one of their employees' daughters, a couple years ago, and at their headquarters. So this one is an example of a sun coming up or going down like I was talking about at the beginning. So you can see in the background that the trees are being lit by the sun because it is still fairly early in the morning, and so the sun's still coming up. And so we added a light camera right, unfortunately I don't have it behind the scenes, but Westcott does have a video on this if you want to look at their YouTube, which we can probably find that and link it to. But so this one is going to be camera right, and it's going to be just out of frame, so you get a little bit of flare right there, which could mimic the sun. You don't want too much, obviously, going over her, but that's we put that orange gel on it to light to color the edge of her hair and the edge light so that it looks more like the sun, because obviously you can see back in the background the trees are orange, so obviously the sun's lower because it's more saturated in orange when it first comes up or right when it's going down. So that is giving the illusion that is the sun hitting her when it's actually not. So one of my favorite techniques, especially with athletes, love to use it. So hopefully that helps. Hopefully that's going to be something you can incorporate into your pictures. It doesn't have to be athletes and stadium lights. It can be a lamp behind somebody that isn't very powerful, that's got a cool color cast to it, and it's not lighting them because your strobes are overpowering the scene. And you can add a light to just out of frame the exact same way to mimic that, and just make sure you gel it the appropriate color and you'll be good to go. All right, that does it. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, appreciate a like and a subscribe. Make sure you hit the bell so you get notified when we post new content. There's going to be a lot more to come. See you next time.